This episode of Ludonarrative Dissidents is brought to you by the Tabletop Arts Fund. The Tabletop Arts Fund is a community nonprofit dedicated to supporting independent TTRPG and actual play creators through professional development, networking opportunities, and charitable grants. Are you an independent creator with a game or a scenario nearing the finish line? Submissions open February 15th for the first round of the TTRPG Creator Funds, providing financial support for art, editing, layout, and other professional services. Are you an inspiring designer looking for advice on how to navigate a career in tabletop RPGs? Check out Above the Table, a monthly series where senior industry professionals share their hard-won expertise. Full details on these and other projects are available at tabletop.artsfund.org or via social media on Blue Sky at tabletop.artsfunds.org. Welcome to Ludonarrative Dissidents, a podcast about role-playing games, their culture, design, and play. Each episode deep dives into one tabletop RPG book, mechanic, or style of game, taking it apart to see how it works and putting it back together to understand how people play it. I'm Ross Payton, joined by Greg Stolze and James Wallace. We've all written for RPGs, published our own games, and have worked in the field for years. You can learn more about us at ludonarrativedissidents.com. Hello, and welcome to Ludonarrative Dissidents. This is Season 3, Episode 9, Dogs in the Vineyard, curated by our backer, Kvetch, who I believe used a community poll to choose which game he would have us review, and Dogs in the Vineyard won. And not entirely surprising, it is a game with a reputation. It is a well-known game, especially in the indie RPG scene, and it is certainly worth discussing. Greg, you actually reached out to the author, Vincent Baker. So what did Vincent say before we even get into the game itself?
Well, generally here on Ludonarrative Dissidents, we try to only review games that you can go out and buy. And the exception to this is the curated episodes.
And licensed games that aren't available. Yeah, which are usually the curated episodes.
And licensed games that aren't available, but which are sort of they get an exception for historical value or whatever. Yeah, so I reached out to Vincent Baker, who I hung out with at Gen Cons, and always had a really, really positive impression of. And he, I guess, quietly removed dogs from the marketplace, and I reached out to him. I'm like, is it gonna be bad if we talk about it? And he was extremely gracious. He said that my reasons aren't secret or anything. It'd be cool with me if you talked about them too. Dogs is based on my family stories about Utah history, but I came to learn those stories left out even the basic facts of the genocide that occurred, and so he stopped selling it because he didn't feel right about making money off it, which is a stand that I respect tremendously in a hyper-capitalist present moment where all value has become conflated with sales and income. It's nice to see someone who actually found a line where they're like, no, I don't think I need money so much that I'm willing to participate, even, unwittingly, in the whitewash. So, Vincent Baker has confirmed my positive opinion of him.
I would say it's worth saying that this never happens, or almost never happens. I am unaware of any other role-playing game that has been taken off the market for anything other than legal reasons, usually that the license has expired, whether that's a license on the property it's based on, as with James Bond 007, which we looked at a few episodes ago, or occasionally licensed mechanics or something like that. Almost every game, because we're in the era of PDFs and digital documents, remains commercially available for as long as it possibly can. And I can't think of any other game where someone went, no, I have discovered something new about and it's not a history game. It's not set in the real world. It's set in a fabricated or a name-changed version of America of the 19th century, specifically Utah. So it's not real, but at the same time, he's no longer comfortable with it. And as I'm sure we'll come on to, the game does have a feel of somebody who is working through some stuff.
Yeah, very deeply personal game.
I'll add, beautifully written. I rereading it for this, I'd played it ages and ages ago because, as we mentioned, it came out in 2004. And I'd had like a positive experience reading it. It wasn't quite my thing. It didn't really last playing it with the group I had at the time. And I'm not exactly sure why that was. Maybe we just didn't get it. We might have been a little still stuck in the sort of adversarial stance of D&D and to a lesser extent Vampire. Well, I'll get into that presently when we talk about how it does what it does and why people play it and why they play it the way they do. Because it is trying to do something that at the time, to me, it felt like Vincent was solving problems that gaming was not even aware it had. And now people, and I don't know if it actually solved the problem, but it was the first run at a solution, or it was an early run at a solution that got attention. Have you run it? Ross? Is this going to be one of the few games I have played and you haven't?
I have played it. It was a single session, and it is a session that I don't remember. It was actually before RPPR when it was played, because it was out before then, and it was a game that I think collapsed because it was also a friend was running it. And it was my friend was like, you've been running so many games lately, Ross. I want to run a game. So this would be my first time. And I discovered that Dogs in the Vineyard is not a good first game if you're learning how to
Holy
GM.
crap, no, it is not. No. I struggled.
Yeah. I think we fell apart on the conflict.
I ran it as well. I was looking for a one-shot to run with my occasional group. And, none of them have played Dogs. They're all the kind of people who would be interested to play Dogs, not just because it's an interesting game, but because of it, where it lies within the continuity, where it came out in 2004, kind of at the tail end of The Forge. And I believe Vincent Baker was influenced by The Forge. I don't know to what degree he participated.
Oh, Vincent was...
I think he mentioned...
Vincent was a rock star.
By name.
The fact that the people who have demons obey them are explicitly called sorcerers... I noticed that.
Yes, there is. That's a ping to Ron Edwards and his game Sorcerer, which won the Diana Jones Award and a bunch of other things, and were enormously influential. But yeah, I thought I could, with my however many decades it is of GMing experience, read through the book and went, think I can manage this, and hit character generation, and was struggling because there's some stuff within Judge N that calls on the GM to do some pretty fast improvising on themes of morality and conflict. And yeah, it's coming up with that stuff on the fly is doable, but it was not good. I would have really liked just 5 minutes of kind of contemplative quiet, which rarely happens during character generation. Just to kind of think, oh, well, this character and the way this is coming out, I could do this, but to be plumped with the way it works. Let's talk about the way it specifically works. In character generation, you create your character, you split up your dice pool. There are loads of dice, enormous quantities of dice, more dice.
Oh yeah, it's a big old.
Well, let's first, for those who aren't aware, the basic premise of the game.
We should
I'll just read the first paragraph.
Yeah, you're Mormon Judge Dredd. That's it. Okay, we've said it. We can move on now.
Yeah. Mormon Judge Dredd is not a bad way to put it, but let me read the first paragraph of the book on chapter 1, How to Play. Dogs in the Vineyard is about God's watchdogs, young men and women called to preserve the faithful in a hostile frontier territory. They travel from town to isolated town, carrying mail, news, and doctrine, healing the sick, supporting the weary, and pronouncing judgment upon the wicked. One early playtester said, what she loves about the game, a town welcomes you with celebration and honor, but what you're there there to do is to stir up its dirt and lay bare its sins. Mormon Judge Dredd, it is myth-making. It is an episodic game. It's a town of the week. what's the sins, how are you going to stop them, and then you move on. And everything in that game is meant for this episodic. And in between towns, you contemplate what you changed, and based on your fallout, which we'll get into, your character advances or not. Yeah, so that's the basic premise. So, but yeah, character generation is the first step, and it is a lot.
Loads and loads of dice. You put together your character, you put together your stats, you work out this kind of, and then your traits. And traits are written, you make them up. It's not unusual, this is. I think I always go back to Ghostbusters being the first, I think, 1984, 1985, where you write, you make up some of your skills.
Gotta take your word for it.
I'm not saying I'm necessarily right there, but it's the first I'm aware of. So this is something that by this point has been around for 2 decades, but you've got to come up, and how you phrase them exactly. You can phrase them as sentences about your past. You can phrase them as skills. You can just write horsemanship. One of the examples, you can phrase them as your attitudes, like I'm very comfortable working around horses. I used to break horses with my dad. Okay, well, that's creating a relationship within your background. And this is quite, nicely done. And then you've got to take I'm a Dog, not in a, it's a Lassie Hallstrom movie. Or Iggy Pop, for that matter.
Yeah.
And there you have the difference between Greg and myself. I go to Scandinavian cinema. He goes to American punk. But you have to take that specifically as a trait or a relationship, that you are a member of this body of God's watchdogs. Then you put together a bunch of your relationships with people within the game or people outside the game. You write down your belongings. And then there's an accomplishment. And each player has to go through this with the GM through character generation. You hope something. As a player, you come up with a hope. And the example is, I hope that my character won distinction in the eyes of the teacher of scripture. Or I hope my character overcame his fear of blood. Or I hope that my character exorcised a demon. Or it can be, so it can either be something corporal, that, real world that you accomplished. Or it can be more insubstantial, about growth, learning, change of habits.
I hope my character overcame my fear of blood.
Yeah, that's right. And the GM has to improvise on the fly an incident where your character was given a chance to confront this and play through the combat system. And I think this is partly as a way to, it's character growth.
And I'm not going to call it the combat system so much as the conflict resolution system, because...
Yes, much better.
It works for talking. It works for, it escalates all the way up to shooting. It's very scalable. Yeah. But as part of character generation, I'm going to show you how conflict resolution works. I'm going to teach you the game as part of character generation. Doesn't seem like a bad idea, especially when problem resolution is not as... is new. It's not the typical. I mean, the typical character resolution is, I roll some form of dice thing, and if I get above a number, the piñata cracks open and I get the candies of success. But in this, it is this very elaborate back and forth where you roll a bunch of dice and then you sort them and then you decide which results you use. And it becomes this exchange.
It's a dialogue. It's completely a dialogue. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Oh, I raise. Yes.
But it's a dialogue based on poker. The poker seeing and raising.
Yeah. The thing I liked about the accomplishment step is that it doesn't matter if you succeed or fail at this task. It either way, it establishes a new trait for your character, and it just how you flavor it, how you word it. A lot of these traits. In terms of it reminded me of Fate aspects, obviously, because I've written a lot of Fate.
Oh, you and your Fate.
Yeah, they're very open ended. This is a game that really rewards creativity and the ability to improvise, and I can imagine, because there's not a lot of examples in the book. So
there's a few. There's more, I'd say, than some of the books we've looked at. It's not
a large book.
It really isn't. It's only just over 100 pages. And that's including a number of pages that are just completely blank as kind of section breaks. It's not longer, and it's not a big book either physically. In the pages are, is it
about 6 by 9?
Yeah, I've never seen a physical one. I'm working off a PDF.
Yeah, it is 6 by 9.
Greg is literally holding up a copy for us to see.
Oh, it's 5.5 by 8.5 inches. So
Oh no!
Greg, are you exaggerating size? Are you?
No wonder.
Adding
No
half an
wonder
inch
I
there.
always get lost if I can't tell the difference between 5.5 and 6 inches just by looking.
Yeah.
This explains a lot about my life.
After you've determined your character's mechanical, numbers, does talk a bit about the a lot of the setting stuff is interwoven with the game mechanics, because they talk about like, what is life as a dog, how do you become a dog, and how you retire as a dog, what happens to you and your duties. So there's a lot of world building, and this is the kind of game that everyone should read this stuff to be on the same page.
And part of the problem is there is a lot of it, and it's quite in depth, and it's essentially what it's describing is Mormon society of the 19th century, and I suspect quite a bit of the 20th century.
In some ways, it's very impressionistic, though. It struck me as more gestural than most game settings. I mean, if you look at a game setting that I wrote or that Ross wrote for, I don't know, what was the Coin Island one?
Oh, Coin Tract? Yeah.
Coin Tract. I couldn't remember the name.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember the pun. I suppressed it. But the way we tend to write these is, okay, you will arrive at this town, and this town is like this, and here's what it specifically looks like. And if I'm feeling really ambitious, maybe there's a map, and, here's a description of what the people are like and what the churches look like, and that's typical gaming. And what Vincent does is he's like, just give a town a name and throw in some description, but everything else should be defined in play, which means that, of course, you either have to remember what Bushwhack Gulch was like the last time you were here, or just enter a conspiracy of silence to not worry about things being right. Mm-hmm. That, the last time we were in Bushwhack Gulch, there were only 8 farms and now there's 12. Wow, that seems like a lot of growth. But it doesn't really matter. And what Vincent wants you to focus on is the things that do matter. He's not concerned about perfect fidelity to continuity in your games. He's concerned with how can I make you face a moral choice with no higher authority as a player to fall back on other than I want this outcome.
I was going to say, and that's the heart of the game, the moral outcomes, the moral dilemmas that your players are facing. Because apart from anything else, they are young. They are young people, usually in their late teens or early 20s. They have almost no life experience. Even if they're older and more mature, their life experience is still very much categorized by the church that they are all part of, which is not the Mormon church. It is the faith of all things in the King of Life reborn. It is made quite explicit that it's not specifically the Mormons, except it is. Just a footnote.
It's not the Mormons. It's, to be sure, it bears striking resemblances to the Mormons.
Yes.
But
I wonder if it was a legal thing or if it's just, I think the fact that it's in a, no.
I think it was just personal. I think it was just,
I mean, it would be weird.
Yes. Yeah.
It would be weird. I mean, that would be like me writing a game that's like, okay, you're all Catholics and you're going to decide Catholic doctrine. You're all cardinals in like the 14th century. Which could be super fun if you were good, if you were much better at history than I am.
Yeah. And that game is an Ars Magica spinoff, let's be honest.
For a long time, I thought about doing an RPG set in about, basically the idea is you're renegades, the leader of your sect has been executed, his deputies have disappeared and probably been executed, and you're essentially the next generation. You're like 30, 40 years after the main guy was executed by the dominant power in the state. And, so you've heard all this from your parents and your friends, and you believe absolutely that you have the power given to you and you must go out and spread the message. And it's Judea in AD 70, and you are spreading the word of Christianity. I think that's potentially a really interesting setting for a role-playing game, but at the same time, that is not 19th century Christianity. That is, you are reforming Christianity. And this guy, Paul, who says he's a Roman, he was a Roman agent, and now he says he's the voice of the Lord. Well, I don't think we trust him. I think there's something there. This is not what Dogs is doing.
He put all his points into being literate, the bastard.
We're going for the People's Front of Judea here, not any
that's
of those other dissidents.
But I think that there is interesting ground for a role-playing game there, but that's not what Dogs is doing. Dogs is about the moral problems and trying to find a solution.
Yeah, I think jumping on what James said, the language, the morality of this isn't just the Mormon, it's also the American cinematic West.
Yes.
Like they talk about, there's a lot of design notes at the end, and he talks about like, this is and it's also American exceptionalism and the myth of the frontier and civilizing the West and a lot of things. But like, that's the sort of language of this game is the strangers come to town and solve the town's problems. And it creates a framework for this to happen. So this has a lot. This is a game that's very rewarding for people who are very interested in both very specific Christian ways of thinking, because like there is a supernatural element to this game we haven't mentioned yet, which are the demons, which are the Christian demons, which are unseen, invisible spiritual beings that prey upon those who are spiritually deficient. The thing is one of the things that this setting can vary is that, Vincent Baker talks about how this could be like a very down to earth thing where the demons are metaphorical, or they could be like you have magical guns shooting demons and your coat deflects bullets. And your coats are a special setting property. And
the coats are extremely cool.
Yeah,
I loved
them. Yeah, we'll get more into the coats a bit, but like it's very much like what does it mean to be a faithful person and to use faith as something, a higher ideal than like, well, this person did something bad, but do we have to punish them this severely? And like, as the game has written, you have to play basically a theocrat, and you're a theocratic cop, and you're going around enforcing the theocracy. And so like a woman who's like doesn't want to be polygamist, but like her husband is. It's something that obviously would be very alienating to a lot of players. And today, if this game were written, would need a ton of content warnings. So something to keep in mind. But like that's why so many people, I think, the mechanics are so engaging that they have like divided it between the mechanics and the setting. But like it's not just Mormonism; it's the Western. Like that's the biggest thing.
And gender roles. Yeah, I mean the gender roles really got me. There's a page of a girl of the faith is expected to be like X, and a boy in the faith is expected to be like Y. And
there's that theocracy.
If you break out of your role, this could lead you into sin, heresy, blasphemy, and ultimately demonolatry, murder, the destruction of your community, because it's like, man, why do I have to keep my wrists covered? There are guys out there who are wrist pervs. What the hell, man?
19th century was weird.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like there's a paragraph, it's the last paragraph on page 80 that I'd like to just read into the record.
Mm-hmm.
Most importantly, don't have an answer in mind. This is a GM paragraph. GMing Dogs is a different thing from playing it. Your job as the GM is to present an interesting social situation and provoke the players into judging it. You don't want to hobble their judgments by arguing with them about what's right and wrong, nor by creating situations where right and wrong are obvious. You want to hear your players' opinions, not to present your own. And this is intrinsic to how he talks about the sins and the roles and all of this, where it's, these roles seem pretty constraining, don't they? There's a lot of great stories in that.
Mm-hmm.
The stuff about love and romance and how women are not really permitted to spurn a suitor just because they don't like him. That sounds like there's some really good stories there, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that, what really flipped my brain the first time running Dogs and reading it was, whatever they decide to do is right with the faith. Whatever decisions your crazy chaos agent players decide is doctrinally correct is doctrinally correct. It's like, oh man, this guy's cheating on his wives. Well, I guess we better drag him out in, by the hair and shoot him in the face in the middle of the street.
Mm-hmm.
That'll shut his ass up. And then it's like, yeah, and everyone would then say, yep, well, he got what he deserved according to the dogs.
He knew what the law was.
You play adultery games, you win adultery prizes. And what's terrifying is that if you read Under the Banner of Heaven which is not just about Mormonism, it's about extremist breakaway Mormon sects, where it's like the people that mainstream Mormonism look at and go, that's batshit, bro. And yeah, Dogs in the Vineyard does not sound that extreme when you read about these places that are like, oh, yeah, well, we took all the money the federal government gave us for our schools and bought the elder a plane because everybody in the town votes the way the elder tells him. And it's like, you mean tells them? No, it's him. The gender politics at play are very, very antiquated to our perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
But Vincent's argument that, well,
not just antiquated, antithetical.
Right. Unless you're a dog. The one place in the society where women can actually make decisions that matter for anyone other than their families and possess authority and not be completely subservient to any man who's 6 inches taller than them is if you are called by your community to be a dog.
Mm-hmm.
And the rewards for women who have a career as a dog is, once you're done, you're going to have so many suitors because marrying a dog is super prestigious.
Mm-hmm. Whole thing talking about like what you do after a dog is illuminating because all the leaders of society are former dogs almost, and like those who hold office and those who preach and those. So it's a social ambition too. So social status. So real interesting setting material, but like it's a very hard one to navigate if your players aren't all on board with this. Like the players you would need for this to have a really successful game are ones who are really interested in drama and personal character arcs, and ones who are really good at thinking on their feet, and also
who don't want to win.
Yeah,
the ones
it's not about winning.
Yeah. The ones who are like, feed me into the spaghetti making machine and turn me into linguine, grind me up. I want to make hard decisions and suffer for them. I'm into it.
And also comfortable playing and role playing basically someone to the right of the most rabid evangelical fanatic you would meet today. Like,
I mean, it talks, but you don't have to be that way. You can be
there are doctrines written in the book that are
there's some stuff. James, it's kind of there. And this was one of the problems that we ran into because I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I'm not American, and most of my player group are British.
What?
But
I thought you were from Vermont.
Yeah, it's that Canadian. Yeah.
No, Old England, not New England.
Anyway. But yeah,
is it really merry Old England?
It's not. Well, it's merrier than it was a few months ago. But the problem is Mormonism isn't widely known over here. Really, what we know about is what we've read from the Book of Mormon, or seen in, if you've been to see the Book of Mormon, or if you watched Under the Banner of Heaven, because there's a book that had no impact here over here. Nobody I know read it or was even aware of it. So we're vaguely aware of the Mormons. They do have a couple of temples. I was checking the stats. There are fewer Mormons in the UK than there are people living in Blackpool. It's not a big thing here by any means. It is not widely known. I have a vague suspicion we may have more Scientologists. I would need to check the numbers on that. But So asking people, going essentially, you're Mormons, they go immediately. They kind of, is that like the Amish? Is that? Oh no, that's the polygamy. It's the polygamy one. That's kind of what people know. And indeed, I have to say, having watched the Andrew Garfield Under the Banner of Heaven, all the schisms and sects do mostly seem to be about polygamy. It's clearly it's a big deal.
In Under the Banner of Heaven, a big and horrifying deal.
Oh yeah.
Dogs, I like to think that even the doctrinal dogs would look at these breakaway, these sects which are breakaway, and say, yeah, look, you can see it playing out. Some old guy commits pride thinking that, oh, I know what's good for people more than they know what's good for them. This leads to injustice when he decides, oh, that 16-year-old girl is going to be my next bride. Right. Regardless, and I know what she needs better than she knows what she needs. Leads to, some kind of social breakdown where one or the other of them is like, okay, this just proves that the religion is false. This could break the girl's faith. She's like, a truly loving God would not allow this gross old man to make me marry him. And the other 4 girls he's put this through would then the 2 other girls he's put this through would then join her in this false belief and form a coven, or alternately, the elder, who thinks he deserves more wives as a status symbol or just because he's a gross old horn dog, gets the other powerful, horny guys in his community to be like, oh yeah, no, this makes perfect sense to me. And now they're sorcerers, right, who wittingly or no, have demons at their beck and call, because the demons are just... It doesn't say a whole lot about the demons, but it does suggest that they push people towards bad things. But once human beings are organizing their own destruction, the demons are just like, no, man, your idea is better than mine. I just wanted the milkmaid to commit adultery with the shepherd. You're undermining the whole rules of society. I will give you whatever you want. I will work with you.
Right.
I'm your boy. Tell me how to brew the poison for your community, and I'll stick it in the well for you so everyone can just drink it up.
Yeah, which is explained. That's kind of like an example of the town creation system that we'll get into in a second. We should probably talk about, though, the core mechanics. Because that's, aside from the setting...
You keep saying we'll get to that in a bit.
Well, now we're here.
Now it's a bit. Okay.
So the conflict mechanic system is not really like a lot of other RPGs. There's a lot of negotiation, a lot of talking through it before you roll any dice. Because the first thing you have to do is to establish the stakes. Like, what is this conflict about? And what happens, what are the consequences of who wins and who loses? I want to persuade a person to do Y or not to do X. And that person's, wanting to go shoot, his neighbor. And I want to persuade him not to. At the first stage, you then figure out how you're doing this and look at your sheet and determine what relevant traits and attributes are involved.
And that gives you a dice pool, and you roll this giant, chonky double handful of dice and sort them out.
And so does the GM.
Apply them strategically.
Well, in order to apply them, you have to, I think it is, you pick the best 2. The person who initiates the conflict, I believe.
Do they have to do their best 2?
I believe at the beginning you do.
Okay.
It is, let's see here. We roll our dice, lead them out. Your best rolls is some of your 2 highest dice. So,
okay.
Yeah.
And it's a little fiddly.
Well, yeah. Because then there's the, as James mentioned, the poker system of raising and seeing of I'm going to do this, persuade you, and then the other person has to meet your raise or meet your dice, your roll by putting forth their dice, and so there's a back and forth exchange as you whittle out your dice pool. So yeah, James.
But also the number of dice you use to see and raise influences the way that you have responded. If you use 3 dice to respond, you have taken a blow, and you get to define what that means, whether that is... Initially, that will be, almost a metaphorical blow or a spiritual blow or an intellectual blow. But as the combat escalates, and it goes through very specific stages, because it starts off non-physical, or almost always starts off non-physical, and so you move through the verbal stuff, and then you move into essentially fisticuffs, weapons, guns... and guns are almost always... You can. You don't have to go that far.
You don't have
It is possible to win a combat, or certainly to end a combat before you get that far. I was reminded very much of a system from a game called Balance of Power, a computer game from 1985, designed by the legendary Chris Crawford, who... I've talked a bit in the past about the quasi-intellectual journal that Andrew Ralston and I put together in 1994, Interactive Fantasy, partly because there was already a British fanzine called Interactive Fiction, but simultaneously there was an American thing called Interactive Entertainment Design, which looked like a fanzine, was put together by Chris Crawford, but again, it was one of the first people actually going, we are looking at how computer games work, what makes them work, what makes them fun. Really inspirational stuff, and I had a meeting with Chris in I think 95 or 96, and no, it would have been 95, and we talked about merging the thing and possibly buying him out, but by that point we already knew we were making no money on this thing anyway. But Balance of Power, to get back to that, is basically you are America and it's the Cold War, and the computer is Russia or the other superpowers. And there's a thing in there where, you can start off quite small and, I'm doing a training exercise. The Russians are doing a training exercise and you respond, you push some troops to the border and the Russians move their troops closer to the border. And you go, I'm not having that. And, okay, they're flying over your territory now. Oh, okay, well, we over the other side of the world, we start threatening their border there. And in 3 minutes... you're in nuclear war, and the way the game does nuclear war, it just blanks the screen and goes, the world has been destroyed in a nuclear war. We do not reward failure. There's no... I think there's something about, you were probably expecting animations of mushroom clouds, but we do not reward failure. And it's, oh shit. If you escalate stuff, you've got to be prepared. You've got to back it up. There's no bluffing when, your stakes are nuclear weapons. And the gun fills that role within dogs. And I think within a lot of Western games, the gun is the ultimate lawgiver. The gun has no morals, but it is the ultimate arbiter of power.
Going back to the Western paradigm. Yeah.
The peacemaker.
Because basically, like, when you have this conflict, whatever you start out with, you only have so many dice. And once you roll them all, that's it. And so if your opponent rolled better and matched all your raises and then you run out of dice, you either have to bow out or you have to escalate.
Well, there's no way I can persuade him with words. Maybe a kick to the crotch will adjust his attitude. When that runs out, it's like, oh man, my crotch sure hurts. Maybe I'll stab him to get him to back off. And once the knife's out, you're like, oh no, he's using potentially deadly weapons now. Well, I guess I'd better pull out this gun with a barrel so big it looks like a tunnel a train's gonna come out of.
Yeah, it's a great system. It's really intelligent.
Oh yeah,
and it really models what it's trying to do in a very believable. And it's like you get that sinking feeling in the pit of your stomach every time your opponent raises. Oh God, I have to go further. I have to take the net, or I back down and lose prestige, which is also the way Balance of Power did it.
Not just prestige, you lose, if you give up, it's like, okay, and now the other guy narrates getting the stakes that you set, which is why stake setting has to be so important. I mean, a conflict where, we square off and I negotiate to the stakes, one of us walks away with a broken arm, is different from the stakes one of us loses a fight, is possibly different from the stakes I believe I can hold my head high having given him a licking. They're fine distinctions, but they can make a real difference.
Well, yeah, no, they do. Also, every time you do things like taking a blow or reverse and dodge, or you do get to narrate. Well, no, only when you take the blow. Like if you dodge or reverse it, You don't take any fallout, but you do take fallout. You could take fallout at the end of the conflict. And you kind of want some fallout anyway, because that's how your character advances. But you do narrate between each thing. Like, I take the blow by getting punched in the face, or like that insult really stung me, or I dodge it. You had to literally dodge out of the way. So there's a lot of narration between. So this is a slow paced, strategic, like thinky kind of conflict system where you need to be like, okay, I need to consider how I'm going to narrate and how I'm going to do this. There is one thing though about cutting your losses. So if you don't want to escalate and you want to bow out, you can cut your losses, in which you get to keep a die and set it aside, your highest remaining die, and use it in a future conflict about the same thing. So it kind of so there is a minor reward for cutting your losses, of being like, you intimidated me earlier, but I'm back. I've got my medal back, and I'm going to win this argument or win this fight or whatever it is. There are rules for doing multiple opponents versus a single person, but like the way it works, the GM is, I think, going to get outgunned pretty quickly if 2 or 3 dogs are teaming up on one person, which kind of makes sense.
Is just going to be buried under the mountain of dice.
There's a lot of dice.
Something that has, it's a big fistful of dice, which is fun. Who doesn't like to have the tactile pleasure of, like, okay, here comes my 10 die pool, dodge this.
Yep, Warhammer is a popular game for a reason.
But what I was going to say, so an insight that's like climbing up into my mind as you speak, Ross, is that, okay, so there are some games where they're very tactical, and it's like, okay, I'm going to put a lot of thought into how I allocate these dice and these sets. And, some versions of Reign play like this, where it's like, okay, well, I'm going to do this for this and these 2 for that. And now and here's how it goes off with the timing. And it's very mathematically tactical. And James, you alluded earlier to the difficulty of pop creativity, where it's like, okay, wow, I hope I overcome my homosexuality while I'm at dog college. GM, instantly create a scene where I confront that.
And then played through it. Yeah,
and play through it right now. Go, 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 go. You got the ball. Take your shot.
Have a structured moral argument on the fly, following prompts given you by the dice. It's not easy.
This is both kinds of hard at the same time. One hemisphere of your brain is like, okay, well, my highest die is a 7, so my highest dice are a 7 and a 5, so I'm obligated to play those. But that other 5 and that 4 I can hold back for later, so that I could reverse a blow instead of having to take the blow. And meanwhile, the other side of your brain is going, okay, so I'm gonna appeal to when we were kids and used to go down to the crick and catch crawdads and how life was simple and innocent then. Okay, so the 5 and the 4 represent the innocence of childhood, but if I have to fall back to this 3 and this 2, that's going to be bringing up when I pushed him into the stream as a joke, but he got really scared. And it feels like it might be a lot to ask of a player or GM, but it also feels like that, man, once you get in the hang of it and it's cooking, it's like double fun. It's both kinds. That gaming has these 2 kinds of fun, the intellectual mathy fun and the scenery chewing, talking in accents. Oh God, you never loved me, did you? Kind of acting out fun, and this could bring them together in a beautiful chocolate peanut butter collision, or it could be that, like, I can't figure out either one of those, and I'm hung between them.
Yeah, we had moments, and this is just a few weeks ago. We had moments of people just drying up, and me, I dried up, and I go, okay, I need to pause for a moment to think, and that is never good in a game. That destroys your flow. It's a slow system. It's quite fun while you're in it, but it is a slow conflict resolution system. It's quite mathematical. And the one other thing is, this is a game in which you are basically playing a religious police person who may be executing people for violating, arbitrary religious rules. and you have a conflict resolution system that is explicitly based on poker. And that's weird. I could not get past that ludonarrative dissonance. The fact that this is explicitly a gambling process about raising the stakes within poker. It uses the same vocabulary and the same, flow chart, essentially, as a good game of poker will.
But it doesn't, and I'll tell you why. I don't say this often, James, but I think you're mistaken, and the reason is that the dice are in the open and the cards are in your hand. Once the dice hit the table, we all can see what the numbers are.
There is that.
And in poker, you can bluff. You cannot bluff in dogs.
No, but it's using the vocabulary of poker. It's using, I see you and raise you. It's the stakes. These are gambling terms.
Yeah.
And poker is associated, whether it was played in the Old West or not, it is associated with the Old West.
Surely it was played in the Old West.
Yeah.
There's that gambling sense of brinksmanship / playing chicken. Like, can I take more fallout than you? Am I willing to sacrifice more to do this? How much do you really want this? Because
go ahead, shoot me in the kidney. I've got two.
Or my faith will protect me. I'm the king of life.
One time I saw these coats be bulletproof.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I guess it's only a sometimes bulletproof thing. I've committed the sin of pride.
Now, there is a generic version of Dogs in the Vineyard called Dogs. That was released in 2019, which stands for Dice Pool and Moral Prediction-Based Generic Role-Playing System by K.N. Obao. And I think they started this, making the generic system because they wanted to do an RPG based on JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which is a shonen anime series about dueling between supernaturally powered combatants. And the duels are very intricate and unique. And I think this kind of staging and brinksmanship works well for that kind of anime style duel, which is an interesting connection, because a lot of people also used it for Star Wars and for Jedi and that kind of thing. And that goes back to the language of the Western, the gunfight at high noon. It's a unique system, and I'm kind of, now that I think about it, it's been around for 20 years. Not many RPGs have really used this kind of system because while it's mechanically innovative, it's slow, as we mentioned, and requires a lot from the players.
Yeah, handling time. It's
difficult. It makes you work. And most people do not play games in order to. I mean, there are some.
There are some masochistic perverts, like probably everyone.
The board game example would be the brain burners. The heavy Euros where you sit there in silence, just formulating plans, and someone says, "Who's for pizza?" and you've forgotten, and it's wiped the plan from your mind because you're distracted.
Silence.
It's I can't do that. I cannot play those games. I could play them a bit before COVID. I absolutely can't now.
Yeah. It's like chess. It's like high-end chess. I love the idea of chess and the symbology of chess, but anytime I try to play chess, I'm not that good. Mm-hmm. And the idea of playing against someone who is good, I'm like, no, you're just going to focus down and deploy these preloaded systems that you've internalized from reading chess books and watching Bobby Fischer, and you're just gonna jerk me into a corner and pound my face in, metaphorically speaking. You're gonna control the center, and I'm gonna be a schmuck. Mm-hmm. Dogs feels like it could, if you get in it and don't know what you're doing against a GM who's played it 10 times and is like, okay, I know the rhythms of the dice, and I know when to hold back a high die, and I know how to take damage on the dice that will be the least impactful to my character. It's a system. It's a masterable system, or at least partially masterable.
Oh, sure.
And that may be a positive or a negative depending on how you feel about rewarding people who get really, really deeply into it.
Yeah.
At the same time, I can see how it would be super rewarding to be into some of the beautiful setting details that Baker presents. You said we were going to talk about the coats, Ross. Yeah. And
So
can I talk about? Should I do the
well,
coats?
I'll talk about the coats because
Talk about the
yeah,
coats,
I
Rob.
found them quite fascinating. So I have no idea if this is if the coats are actually if there's something that Baker based this on for Mormonism or if they're totally original. But the idea is the symbol of the dog's office is their coat, which are given to them when they become, after they finish their training, their initiation at the temple in the Bridal Falls, the capital of the faithful. Now, normally a coat is created by the community from where the dog comes from. Their mother is
As led by their family.
yeah, led by their mother primarily, and then then the father, and then the women. It is primarily the task of the women to make it, but the men have to help now, and they are meant to be beautiful and unique and symbolize the dog themselves and how their structure. This is not the only option because some dogs are orphans. Some come from converts from the east or from the mountain people, which is their term for indigenous, peoples, which is one of the reasons I think why Baker, stopped selling the game because of how he talks about the indigenous people. In this case, the dogs who live in the temple and train the newcomers and initiate them might give them a coat or make a coat for them. Some of the faithful simply create coats and send them to the temple to be given to whoever deserves them. And some dogs create their own coats. And so this is part of your character creation is where did your coat come from? What does it look like? And then during gameplay,
what does it say about you?
What does it say about you? But then also,
and by extension, your family and your community.
Yes, or lack thereof. And also, it's an excellent tool for Fallout in terms of like your characters. They talk about how this coat has been stitched or has been worn threadbare by service because, they've been stabbed. It's just been hard on the road. And the expectation is that each community you visit, each town is going to repair and improve your coat or create a new coat when circumstances require it. That some dogs go through multiple coats and that the dogs at the temple who train the newcomers, their coats are so worn, it reflects their hard service in office. So they're a major setting element. And so talking about coats gives a shorthand for talking about a character's past and their background and where they come from and what they've been through. So
right. Imagine a character shows up in this sumptuous coat, which is piecework quilted with autumn leaves. And, it's the whole thing has all these beautiful gold and red and brown leaves on a black background. And yet, on the left side, they've tried to get the stain out of the leaves, but there's still a little stain remains, and there's just this one white patch that's been put in over the stain. And, someone did a crude little snowflake design on that. Now you know where this guy came from and that he's been through some things. That's probably his blood on that coat.
Oh, sure. So actually, this reminds me of something I read on, Twitter. I don't know if you know, there's a person on Twitter, Derek, who is an expert in men's fashion. And he talks a lot about, and he will roast people, and he has an incredible amount of knowledge about the history of men's fashion and clothing. He talked recently about new money versus old money fashion. And he talked about, how Trump, for example, is new money is very gaudy, very bright colors and satin and this kind of very flashy stuff.
I've heard it described as a poor person's idea of a rich person.
Yes, exactly. And then
that's funny. I've heard him described as a dumb person's idea of a smart person.
No, that's Boris Johnson.
But he also talks about how old money will often keep and repair their stuff. Like King Charles, people have taken close-ups of his shoes, and there you can see the little parts where it's been patched over the years, because their idea of wealth is having something for generations, having a suit or a pair of shoes that your father hands down to you and you wear and repair and keep looking good. And so that's kind of it reveals character. What is this person's view on wealth and status and power? And this is how the coats fashion in the game.
And continuity.
Yeah, exactly. Generational versus nouveau riche, old money versus new, and also coats. Like the one with the nice coat, that's a new dog because they haven't seen or done anything. Where the one with the bloodstain, well, that dog's been around a while.
The really painfully simple coat.
Yeah.
that
an orphan.
What's interesting about it is the places where it's been stitched back together after being cut through or stabbed through or torn. And you can see that the shoulders are more faded than the rest of it from all the riding. Yeah. It's a good bit, is what it is. It's a nice little bit of design.
It's a kind of world building that like any RPG is like, oh, that's top tier RPG writing, because it's something that can be integrated and built upon by players and GMs and like through play.
Oh, it's in the rules.
Yeah.
One of the pieces of Fallout you can take is your coat's damaged, dog. What you're gonna do about that?
Yeah. So the coat is more meaningful to the dog than like a +5 Vorpal sword is to a D&D fighter, because that can be sold. It's a commodity to the D&D fighter. It's not like Excalibur is to King Arthur.
It's a number often.
Yeah.
It's just a dice modifier, really.
It's the number 5, which is a big number, but it's just a number.
So, but the other major mechanical system that I find interesting in dogs, aside from the conflict resolution, is the town creation system. The idea is you're going to the town, and there's always something wrong with these towns, and it always starts with pride. It's a good amount of pages talking about. It starts with pride, and then it goes on about like what are people proud about, and how does that lead to sin, and how does that lead to demonic influence, and how can the dogs deal with this. And so it's a lot of GM tools to create an interesting tableau for their conflict.
Your conflict of the week. And what this makes me think of, in studying religion, there's the idea of orthodoxy and orthopraxy, right? And orthodoxy is this holy text specifically gives you these rules, X, Y, and Z. Follow them, you're good. God does not care how you feel. As long as you do X, Y, and Z and don't do A, B, and C, you are righteous in the eyes of the Lord. And orthopraxy says, no, it has to be a spiritual communion. You have to transform your inner self to align with virtue and righteousness. And once you do that, you will only want to do what is right. So a series of specific rules about what you can and can't eat and what you can and can't look at is less useful than guidance in how to achieve a sort of enlightenment that leads you to be a good person innately. The town development system, I'm like, this feels like a smushing together of RPG's love of process and religion's love of orthodoxy. It's like, you can see how, it always goes this way. It always starts with pride and ends with murder. And the route that, the trajectory may be shallow or it may be acute, but it always starts at the same spot and ends at the same spot. It's kind of fascinating and suggests that there is some kind of connection between the RPG designer brain and the theologian brain, which I had never previously suspected. In a different life, the three of us were cardinals.
Yeah, or rabbi.
I think almost certainly. I can see myself, as a monk or something, because that's the way you got to be around a lot of books.
And what are rules lawyers debating other than points of faith, geez.
How many +2 modifiers can dance upon the head of a pin?
Yeah, exactly. The edition wars are the true holy wars.
Heretic!
Medieval bestiaries, literally, collections of monsters. With stats and, what's this one's special power? Oh, its farts are so bad they will kill you. Yeah.
I think I met that guy once.
Was it at Gen Con?
Yeah, actually.
And after that, there's advice on creating NPCs and advice on running the game and all excellent stuff. And there are some design notes, as I mentioned. He does specifically mention the Forge at one point, and obviously a lot of movies and a lot of TV shows and things of that nature. One of the reasons why this stood out in 2004, right, is that this is one of a game that has a total package of like settings, themes, and mechanics all working together in one unity. That we don't really and keep in mind this. One thing that I looked up after was that Vincent Baker didn't even publish Apocalypse World in 2010, but like you can see his thoughts about game design in Dogs leading to Apocalypse World. And man, I can't believe it's. I thought Apocalypse World had been around longer because it's so influential,
It's changed the entire scene.
I'll add this too. I had, in my mind before I reread Dogs, I was thinking about, okay, how did we get from Dogs to Apocalypse World? And the two major changes that I see are in Dogs, it's like, okay, I hope my hands are big enough to hold all the dice I'm going to need to lay this whooping down on this conflict. And in Apocalypse World, it's like 2d6, baby. It's 2d6 for everything. Everything's a 2d6. So that's a big shift. And my guess is part of what motivated it is handling time. And that having a ton of dice seems super fun, but having to sort a ton of dice is never super fun.
Yeah, and as you were saying, the cognitive load of having to deal with the handful of dice and remembering all the values at the same time as you're trying to advance the narrative.
And set some aside, and it's like, oh wait, how many of these are going to turn into Fallout dice, and what are their size? It's a lot. The other big shift is that Apocalypse World is player-facing, right? And this is not. This is your GM is...
Well, not entirely. GMs do roll dice for the conflict.
But the GM, everyone rolls a lot more dice in this. Apocalypse World feels like it is less the GM has to roll a pool for every single person involved. And, Apocalypse World is like, no, you're going to roll for things as a whole.
And at the same time, the GM also feels this is not anything like a D&D style game where the GM is basically the world and what happens and the narrator
1,000,000%.
Of a pre-written story. It's not completely fresh. This is 2004. We've seen Sorcerer. We've seen a number of games that kind of basically go, the players are not necessarily leading the narrative, but have the ability to shape the narrative. So it didn't feel completely fresh. But the combination of that with this setting, we'd had a bunch of recent Western games, Doomtown, which we've talked about before, was briefly in passing, was successful. But that's hokey Western. That's all the Western cliches. And suddenly it's like, no, it's Utah or it's not Utah. It's the mountain people. It's the Mormons. These are your religious, enforcing a religious code. That's new in almost any game, let alone because the religious code is there rather than it being some made up nonsense or, the Jedi code or whatever it is.
It doesn't have to be the Book of Mormon.
No,
you can
it doesn't,
make stuff up inside it and be like this. The King of Life says that.
Well, there are some written things.
Yeah, on Thursdays we wear our hats backwards if that's what you want. But it has a reality, it has a cogency and a centrality to the narrative as well. Everything is about that code. You have to follow it. You have to enforce it. That was, and I don't think Dogs, it was never a bestseller, but it was absolutely a critical darling. People were talking about it.
It was like the Velvet Underground, where they didn't sell a lot of records, but everyone who bought a Velvet Underground record went on to found their own band. Yeah. A lot of game designers read Dogs in the Vineyard. And a lot of game designers read the book before Dogs in the Vineyard, which was Kill Puppies for Satan.
Yeah.
Because
2001.
Vincent Baker printed out a bunch of copies and went over to every game designer who respected and said, please have a copy of Kill Puppies for Satan.
He mailed them. Out. I remember Jonathan Tweet at Gen Con.
Yep.
I assume 2001.
That's who I know who got one.
Pulling this thing out of an envelope going, did you get one of these, James? I went, no. What's this? He said, it's called Kill Puppies for Satan. I said, who's it by? I don't know. Yeah, it came out of nowhere. And I rashly said, this is brilliant. I'll publish it. And then changed my mind on that. One of many Hogshead related decisions that life would have been interestingly different if I had gone ahead with
Kill
that.
Puppies.
Yeah.
the paint was not dry on Vincent Baker's full game design ability at his Kill Puppies for Satan stage any more than mine was in Unknown Armies 1 versus 3.
Yeah.
I mean...
But just to pick up on that, I don't think it's fully formed in Dogs either. I think you look at it now in the context of what we've seen Vincent come up with later, and Meggie is, I don't know how it's pronounced, his partner's name. Meggie, Megui? Can't even spell it.
Yeah.
Ross, you got it. Meggie?
Yeah, I'd have to.
But the
Megui, I think, yeah.
Megui. But the work the two of them have done together has changed the face of roleplay.
Absolutely.
You look back at this and you go, no, bits of this are brilliant, but it doesn't quite cohere. There are rough edges. This is an early work. This is
it's excellent journeyman work, but it's not his masterpiece.
Yeah, this is Northanger Abbey compared to Pride and Prejudice. Yes, okay. I'm not sure Jane Austen is necessarily the first place. Okay, it's the Pick.
How did I ever think you were from Vermont?
Yeah. It's the Pickwick Papers to David Copperfield or Nicholas Nickleby.
Oh, there we go.
It's Great Expectations. It's great. Mm-hmm. It's still better.
It's by a great designer.
It
but
inspired a lot of designers.
Yeah.
It's not the greatest work of the greatest designer. It's Gyo instead of Uzumaki.
It's better than 80-90% of the stuff that was coming out at the time, but it is still, you can go, he's not got that quite right. Mm-hmm. That's a clever mechanic, but it doesn't quite sit right in this context. It's kind of scraping a little bit against the sides. It's too top heavy.
Yeah.
He maybe hadn't learned how to kill a darling yet.
Well,
I think that might well have been it. And actually you look at that huge complex dice mechanic, and it is difficult to see how you could streamline it without losing some of what gives it a lot of the flavor. It is structurally, it's a brilliant piece of design. It just doesn't quite work at the table.
Yeah.
It's too long and too top heavy. But I read through it on the page.
Too much gun.
Yeah, I read through it and I just went, I was almost breathtaken by it. It's quite stunning in terms of what it's trying to model as a piece of mechanics modeling a real world process of escalating an argument. Really, really, I can't think of another mechanic that I've seen in a long time that is as smart as that from a design. And this is essentially his first major release, his first full role-playing game. Kill Puppies for Satan was 20 pages and was essentially a joke.
Yeah.
A very funny joke, but it was a joke game. It was not like Hull. It's not intended to be playable.
It's a commentary on game design more than anything else.
Exactly. Yeah.
A couple notes. Dogs in the Vineyard did win 2 awards. Indie RPG Rewards in 2004, and it also was nominated for a Diana Jones Award. It won in 2004 it won Indie RPG of the Year. And Most Innovative Game certainly qualified for that. In 2005 was nominated for the Diana Jones Award for Excellence in Gaming. Did not win, though. But
can't remember what did that.
Yeah. I wonder if there is someone else that's trying to tackle the escalating conflict idea and just approach it in a different way. The only game I can think of that's even close is Upwind, which is a card-based game created by Jeff Barber that I've written for. And but in that one, you're dealt a hand of playing cards, and then you so it's more poker-like because you literally have a hand of cards, and you bid them to escalate the mechanic. And it takes slow. You have to establish stakes first, but it's also for narrative purposes, not a moral, where you're establishing how the scene is resolved. So you would resolve an entire fight, a battle in one hand of the cards, but your character's hand of cards is only renewed through like healing and rest and stuff. So there's a resource management for cards. Upwind's the only game that has this kind of like a raising and seeing mechanic. But it's actually, you only play a couple at a time unless you have specific abilities or something like that. Then you can play additional cards. A game that game designers should at least read about, or at least read the Dogs, the generic version, to understand the rules of mechanics, because they're pretty faithfully. So the Dogs system is an 80-page PDF. You can also get it print on demand through DriveThru RPG. You know, they genericize the rules, and then there's some material on how to create a setting and that kind of thing, but like it's meant as a toolkit game. You have to do a lot of work to sort of like establish what kind of things you want to do. And I think it's meant only for games that have a very specific vibe where the escalating conflict is the heart of it. So again, I'm thinking back to Westerns, but also shonen anime or samurai films. The dual mechanic,
right?
The dual conflict is sort of like the heart of it, because this is also a game where like
the Chambara.
Yeah, the Chambara, but like the one-on-one. This is not a game that I think is really good for a large number of players, or like a game where players are expected to fight as a team.
Well, he says, you know, you probably don't want more than 4 players.
Yeah.
It could work with as few as 2.
But given how any given fight, I would imagine take like half an hour to resolve. At a minute, you know,
because of the handling time,
and just a lot of executive energy. Because you have, like you mentioned, James, there's a lot of thinking on your feet. Yeah, it's a very specific game, but I think its greatest legacy is how it got people thinking about how to make games. And
like I said, it made me think about stuff that was really useful. I'm not sure that I read this and immediately thought, oh, I love the idea that social conflict switches seamlessly to physical conflict. And, you know, that led me to a dirty world where it's like, oh, yeah, you know, it's all one thing. It's just different kinds of damage and skills. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's great.
It's significantly flawed. Like, as we mentioned, the mountain people treatment is like a black stain.
We didn't even get onto that. Yeah,
it is a black stain on this game, and also like it glorifies colonization and like theocracy, because like in the text of the game, does
it glorify theocracy, or does it foreground?
No, it glorifies, because the dogs are objectively right, and like there's no like it turns out we were the baddies all along kind of. You would have to house rule that in. The dogs are right. Demons are real. You have to save them by following this very conservative. Women are second-class citizens. Everyone else is a sinner except for the faithful.
Demons are real and are trying to push the faithful out of the path of righteousness.
Yeah.
You forgot paternalistic.
Paternalistic at best. Like, I mean, at worst, it is genocidal. Like, I mean, like the way they talk. Oh, the bound people, they just move away every time we settle in. They're fine with us taking their land.
It can be both.
Yeah.
No, I never said they were fine with people taking their land. It suggested that maybe the King of Life arranged things so that their nomadic travel patterns diverged from the faithful long enough for Bridal Falls to really get going.
Yeah.
Although, if you think about it, it's like one of those, well, you know who operates by making coincidences happen. It sounds like the King of Life is maybe just another big demon. But that would be a radically different interpretation of Dogs in the Vineyard, though I'll point out that it freely says, yeah, you can have a relationship with a demon. You can have, I'm not going to stop you. I'm not going to tell you what's right and wrong. I'm just here to provide fascinating questions, which hits differently in 2024 than it did in 2004, when I'm just asking questions was not the default position of every single shit stirrer on the internet.
Mm-hmm. Oh, here it is. Here's what I was saying. The faithful have guns, work animals, organization. Everywhere they go, they make roads and walls. So as the faithful have expanded, it's been easy for them to push the natives, the mountain people, out in front of them. The faithful have guns, work animals, and everywhere they go, they make roads and walls. The mountain people are accustomed to packing up what they own and moving on. And they talk about what the stereotypes the faithful have of the mountain people. And I can totally understand Vincent Baker not wanting to sell this. I wouldn't it's like I said, it's a significantly flawed game in terms of its setting. And even because like now you would need to write a chapter, you would need a tool on a chapter on safety tools and facilitating this, and also like hey, maybe you want to have a game where the dogs are not objectively right and they're just at best misguided or at worst, genocidal, theocratic enforcers.
I mean, we're back to Delta Green.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
you can see parallels.
Oh, sure.
Once you believe you are the chosen servant of the King of Life.
But the language of safety tools and understanding this and decolonization, these kind of topics are not part of they weren't part of the conversation back in 2004.
Landscape. And the question is, did having this game front and center saying these are the, throwing a spotlight on the problematical aspects of the patriarchal and colonial endeavor, did that lead people to, hey, maybe we should take this a little more seriously, install some tools that provide a little safety, as opposed to just going out there and diving headfirst into these extremely complicated and painful issues that have been selected by the GM specifically to be thorny.
Yeah. I mean, there's a room for those kind of games. There's definitely a place for those kind of games, but it is a difficult thing to handle. And that, like I said, you need safety tools and that kind of thing.
People need to know what they're getting into when they're going in.
Oh, and sensitivity readers, for example. At a minimum. Yeah, if you're gonna run the generic version, don't read this as a historical artifact. But God, I cannot imagine trying to run the game as written, the original text, especially now.
At the same time, it is worth saying that the original book is brilliantly written. The writing style is great, but the way it is laid out, every chapter is followed by a synopsis of the chapter, hitting the main points from it. The way it pulls out examples, the way it illustrates stuff, it does have problems. It is that core mechanic I had to read through, and it is not short. 2 or 3 times just to get it straight in my head, and then had to read through it again on the fly as I was playing it with the players. And people have done synopsis, kind of handout 1-page versions of it, but you still need to refer back to the rules because there are special cases and things that the handouts don't cover. It's an early work. It's somebody who's learning their craft, but the tone of it is, I think, what makes Dogs in the Vineyard, as opposed to Dogs, the standalone generic version, really something special. If it had come out as a generic game, I don't think people would have remembered it 2 or 3 years later. It's the fact that it is about this really difficult moment in time. And we know it's different because of everything that happened with the genocide. I'm just going to mention at one point, this is not the first game to deal with Mormonism in this specific period of difficult Mormonism and the genocide, because Games Workshop's Dark Future did as well. The Forgotten One. Dark Future was developed as a role-playing game just as Games Workshop was getting out of role-play. So they never published it as a role-playing game, but it came out as a car combat game with mini cars on a board, somewhere in between Car Wars and Battle Cars.
Listeners, you can't see it because podcasts are a sound-based medium, but I have just this horror-struck expression on my face going across the camera to James.
Yeah.
Trust me, it's really interesting. So Dark Future, the role-playing game, would have been the first cyberpunk role-playing game. Then you've got this car combat game. So they kind of bolt the two together in an ungainly kind of way. So the cities are high-tech, but the lands between them are blasted wastelands with bandits in cars. And that
the bandits are Mormon?
No, because it's our world. It's Warhammer. It's part of the Warhammer continuity, but it's a parallel universe to ours. It's the 1980s, or it's even I think the late 70s. The game world starts in. Bear in mind, this is published, I think, in the late 80s. Elvis is an NPC in the world. The idea that Elvis becomes a rock star and is then drafted, goes into the army, decides he likes the army, stays there, comes out of the army in the 80s, becomes a mercenary. It's got one, but so the board game is a flop. It does not work. But they've already
shocked.
commissioned a bunch of novels because they've just started. This is pre-Black Library. This is Workshop's first foray into fiction in the 1980s when they're getting people like Ian Watson and, more importantly, Kim Newman writing as Jack Yeovil to write a whole bunch of books. Jack Yeovil, Kim Newman, brilliant author and film critic, over here mostly known as a film critic, just kind of goes off and works out the background and what is the point where the Dark Future timeline diverges from ours, and it is very specifically the Mormon genocide. I don't think he uses, I think like Vincent Baker, and this is what brought it to mind, he doesn't use the term Mormons, he calls them something else. But that is the moment where chaos enters the world, old world, Warhammer chaos enters the world and starts diverging their timeline into something much darker and weirder. The fiction, specifically the Jack Yeovil novels for the Dark Future line, are some of my favourite pieces of game fiction ever written. They are brilliant. The game is entirely forgotten and out of print, and justly so, because it's not very good. We did, when I was doing Hogshead, we were trying to get hold of the rights to reanimate it as the role-playing game that it should have originally been, but we wanted the rights to the fiction as well, and it was just as Workshop was starting up the Black Library, and they were, oh no, this is fiction and we own it, and we're not going to give you the rights to it, because the Black Library might want to do with it, something with it. But
of course they didn't.
No, they did, actually. They brought it back in the late 2000s. I think they commissioned a couple. There's like 10 Dark Future novels now. But Route 666, the novel, not the anthology. They did 2 books called Route 666. There's an anthology of short stories, and then there's a novel version of one of the short stories, and it's Kim Newman, Jack Yeovil writing it. That is the one that goes into the Mormon stuff. And it's dark as hell.
James, if you had not told me that you were not good at making things up on the fly, I would think that you were just lying.
I want to believe that
to me.
God's honest truth.
Elvis fighting.
King of Life. Yeah, and it's completely... People don't know this. It's a while since I've read them. It's possible they're not quite as good as I remember.
Right.
I sold off all the novels when we cleared the Hogshead office.
I'm sure the ebooks are out there somewhere.
Oh, yeah, I think this stuff's still available. Yeah, so if you want an alternate take on a Mormon-influenced alternate future in the game world, and a role-playing game that never was, because Mark Gascoigne, who was designing the role-play game, never finished it.
Well, I think that's at this point we've exhausted our...
Can I add one more thing? One more thing. The one thing I want to add, there is no interior art in Dogs in the Vineyard.
There is
the
in
cover.
Mine. There is some interior.
Oh, is there?
Yeah.
Maybe
he reprinted it a couple times.
In the original one.
Yeah.
It's black and white version you have has this corner or has this cover, right?
It has the cover. Yeah, I think that it's a little differently. The stylized.
Cover is done by Vincent Baker's brother Drew, who I think I may have met first because he did some wonderful first-rate, really better than we were paying for illustrations for when I was the developer of Feng Shui before he became a fairly prolific artist for Magic the Gathering. So that's just a fun connection that this brilliant game designer, as an aside, he has a brother who's a brilliant painter who did this I find it super evocative cover for Vincent's book, Dogs in the Vineyard.
Hold that up again, Greg. I just want to check something on that because it reminded me of something. So I can see the text on it. Yeah, because the reason I never bought that is because to a British person, that looks like a Beatrix Potter cover. If you're familiar with... Seriously, that is the style, the oval artwork in the middle, the white background, and that typeface with the slightly, the block, the small caps and stuff. That is what a Beatrix Potter book looks like. And it was just like...
It's called Dogs in the Vineyard, but James can only see rabbits in the vineyard.
Rabbits in Mr. McGregor. Dogs in Mr. McGregor's garden. Man.
Boom, there it is. We workshopped the shit out of that. Good job, James.
Well, you could just do that as a mouse trader supplement.
Benjamin Bunny, you stand accused of stealing bolted lettuces.
Time to face the bunny, the justice
and then the music from... Oh, what's the Clint Eastwood movie? Good, Bad, and the Ugly. The Do. I probably can't hum it because
it's a whistle. It's a it's the whistling one. Well,
I won't whistle it for fear of getting us DACA down.
Yeah.
Oh, good point. I will put up the respective covers of The Tale of Benjamin Bunny and Dogs in the Vineyard next to each other as part of the show notes for this on our website, www.ludonarrativedissidents.com. Follow the link through. There'll be some... I need to work out how to put it. The show notes need more images. There'll be more images. But yeah, seriously, that's why I didn't buy it when I saw it.
Aw.
Oh, God.
I thought it was some kind of... Because all I knew Vincent for, because I didn't follow the Forge, Kill Puppies for Satan, and then a cowboy game about that looks like a Beatrix Potter book.
Yeah.
I assumed there was a continuity there.
I see. Fascinating. Also, if you have questions or comments about this review of Dogs in the Vineyard, you want to discuss it further, we do have a Discord that's open to the public. We'll have a link in the show notes and on our website. So please join us. We have a really active community there with a lot of really good discussions every day about RPGs, game design, and all kinds of fun stuff. So,
and the memes channel is really good.
And the memes channel is very good. Yeah, obligatory memes channel. But yeah, Dogs in the Vineyard, a significant portion of the role-playing game history, and a flawed game, but one worth reading up on at least, and to inform your thoughts on game design. But our next episode, and again, thank you, Kvetch, for curating this episode, for backing us to make sure we get it.
Yeah.
And you know, it was
huge thanks. That's an amazing game to be given the opportunity to just talk about and around for.
It was nice to have one where I could just pull it off the shelf.
No joke. So our next episode will be a little more lighthearted, as we are going to another adventure. Paranoia, the Yellow Clearance Black Box Blues, which I think one of us has a little bit of experience with. Just a little.
Do. Man, that's a classic. John M. Ford, winner of the World Fantasy Award, wrote Yellow Clearance Black Box Blues. Yes. Yeah, this is going to be a good one.
A little nice change of pace from the very serious, dark subject matter of dogs. So thank you all so much for listening. Thank you all so much for supporting us on the Kickstarter, and we will be back to induce a little paranoia in everyone. So thanks for listening. Bye.